back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today I give you 10 more recommendations that you can find right now on Shudder. Alright guys, so as you know, I love Shudder. I'm always promoting it. Maybe one day I'll be sponsored, but as of right now, I am not. I'm just a big fan of it because it's basically the horror version of Netflix. It's the place where you can go and find new horror movies all the time. And a lot of people think it's not very deep because they only recognize a name or two here or there, and so they're like, it's not that great, it's a bunch of crappy movies, whatever. Not true.
Not true.
And I'm here to prove to you that that is not true by doing the deep dive for you and hopefully find you a movie that you haven't heard of and that you enjoy. So with that, let's get to the list. Alright, so kicking off this list is a cheesy, fun 80s movie called Chopping Mall.
Completely mobile, user-friendly, and absolutely fail-safe. But something is going wrong.
And this movie is just bonkers. It's bad in a lot of ways, but it has a lot of charm, and to me, that's what makes it a lot of fun. But there are these robotic policemen going around that go crazy and start killing people, and these high school teenagers are in the mall. They basically stay in there overnight when it closes up, and they're in the mall when all kinds of craziness goes down, and they gotta fight against these robots. So this is a great one for anyone who's into silly, cheesy, 80s, gory movies. This is a great one to check out. Alright, next up I go to Tammy and the T-Rex. And this is another one of those 80s, I think it's early 90s, but same thing basically. But it's very campy, very cheesy, very silly.
I will give you immortality.
It was actually recently on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, so I highly recommend you watch it on there.
What have we been watching tonight? Nothing to do with zombies, that's for sure, you know? It's a love letter to filmmaking and filmmakers, and especially low-budget filmmakers. And it's about how even the corniest, underfunded concept requires a miracle of teamwork to pull off. It's about what we call our mutant family. The audience and the filmmaker, the people who get it.
It's great because you learn some stuff about the movie that's a lot of fun. You get some great, funny, campy jokes from Joe Bob. It's just a fun experience if you've never watched a movie with Joe Bob Briggs. It's great. No matter what though, it's cheesy, campy, and just fun. Next up, we go to the Kane Hodder documentary called To Hell and Back. And this basically does a deep dive into the story of Kane Hodder.
I've murdered more people on film than any actor in history.
Interviews him and a bunch of other people that have been involved in his life, and it tells basically his story. It's basically a biography, and it's really interesting because this guy has lived one hell of a life, and he's known as Jason, and there's that to him, but there's so much more to him in this story. But it's great to hear the behind the scenes stories, the war stories, so to speak. I mean, everything from when he was burned up and almost died to him not getting cast in Freddy vs. Jason and the whole thing with him and Robert Englund. It's just compelling and extremely well done documentary. Anyone who's a diehard horror fan, this is a must watch. Next we go to the summer of 1984. And this is very much a Stand By Me meets Stranger Things kind of thing.
It's a serial killer.
It's a bunch of young 12 to 15-year-old boys that are basically involved in this mystery. They think that their neighbor is a killer of some sorts, and they're trying to solve it, and all kinds of craziness ensues. But it's really just a lot of fun, and it's a period piece, so it takes place in the 80s. But this is a modern movie that just came out a couple years ago, I think 2018. But it's that nostalgic type of thing. It takes you back to being a kid, a young teenager, hanging out with your friends, and getting involved in silliness and hijinks, I guess you call it. Either way, though, it's just a really enjoyable movie. All right, now we go to Cold Skin.
There's your island.
I discovered this movie while researching my ocean horror movie list, and this probably should have been on that list, but unfortunately I didn't watch it till after I had already put the list out. It was one that I meant to put on, but you know, you can't put everything. But I definitely wanted to include it on this because it is a really well done period piece type of movie. This movie takes place in probably the 1700s, 1800s, or something like that. But it's basically these two guys that are isolated on this little island trying to watch this lighthouse. And there's these strange creatures that start coming out at night. And I don't want to give away too much more, but it gets very weird and very creepy. It has a very Lovecraftian type of vibe to it. And you know how much I love Lovecraftian stuff. So to me, this is one that I really enjoyed. But it gets really deep and pretty powerful. It has a lot of weird, kind of uncomfortable things. So this may not be for everyone. But I personally just thought it was a really well done horror, drama, thriller type of film. Alright, now we go to Dark and the Wicked, and this movie is very dark. It's very slow-paced moving. It will get to you. It's definitely got this grimy, dirty underbelly type of thing going on. Very morose, troublesome kind of film. But it's done extremely well, and it is very haunting.
Do you smell him? He's close now.
Very creepy. And there is some savage as fuck scenes in this movie. There's a scene, I wish I could tell you, but I'd rather you just watch it. But there's this one scene fairly early in this movie that just jaw-dropper type of thing. So this is the type of movie that will probably get to you. It is that darker kind of film. If you like more troublesome subject matter and types of movies, this is probably a good choice. Either way, though, it's done very, very well, and I do recommend it on that level no matter what. Alright, now we go to a movie that is a lot of fun, even though it deals with some really dark subject matter. It's called Lucky, and it just came out on Shudder last week.
Ted, I saw someone outside.
Honey, that's the man who comes every night and tries to kill us.
So this movie deals with some really heavy stuff, but I can't really say too much because that would be a big spoiler, because it isn't really until you get basically to the end of this movie before you really kind of understand it. And even then, you're left kind of scratching your head, pondering this movie. It's one of those kind of movies. But the basic premise, so you kind of get an idea of what the deal is here, is this woman is an author and writes self-help types of books. But at night, this guy keeps breaking into her house. And even though she kills him, he just keeps coming back and coming back. And it gets more and more weird. And it starts to kind of unravel, and you start to kind of understand what's going on here. But this movie plays out in a very interesting way, because it is very dark in a lot of ways and deals with some really powerful stuff in a lot of ways. But the way that it's done somehow is still fun and entertaining. Either way, though, you will be thinking about it long after you finish watching it, and it is a really quality movie. Alright, next is Headhunter. And this is a badass movie. That's the best way to describe this movie. It's just a badass movie.
I always thought I could protect her. What took her from me is still out there.
And it's gory, and it's dirty, and it's just a really cool little flick. Small movie, but it does a lot with its smallness. But it's basically about this guy who's in some world that is kind of medieval-ish. So it's swords, chainmail, fantasy world maybe. But it's very dark and gritty and feels real. But he's basically fighting monsters of some kind. And you're just kind of following this guy around on his daily routine. But it also gets pretty dark and heavy at times. I don't know. It's a really interesting movie, though. That's kind of different than anything else I've really ever seen. But it does get gory, and it does get kind of bonkers. It's just a cool movie, especially if you're into more of fantasy type of horror stuff that does like things almost like dragons or whatever. Like, think more along the lines of D&D. It's kind of bonkers movie, but I recommend it. So Headhunter and then this next movie were both recommended by my friend Tommy or Clifford Poles on Facebook. If you guys want to give him a shout out, he comes at me with some really great suggestions, so I just wanted to give him a shout out. So this next one is called Daniel Isn't Real.
It's common for people to see things that aren't real.
If you're a Lovecraftian cosmic horror type of fan, then this is the movie you should check out. This is a very body horror type of film. If you're someone who recently watched Possessor and enjoyed that, then this is a movie that I would recommend. It has a lot of that same kind of energy and vibe to it. It's very sci-fi, but like I said, it is very body horror. It's weird. It's really kind of hard to explain what this movie is even about. But the basic idea is this guy has an imaginary friend when he's a kid. Now he grows up and all of a sudden this imaginary friend is back and you're not really sure if it's real or not. You're not sure if this guy is insane or not, and it just kind of starts unraveling from there. But it's just a really weird sci-fi horror, cosmic horror with, especially at the end, it gets really crazy, really over the top. But this movie is cool, man. It's fun, eerie, weird, just a really great time type of movie. Alright, last up is a movie I've heard about for quite a while now, and it just, honestly, the cover didn't look great, and the little bits and pieces I heard didn't sound great, and so I just hadn't watched it. But I finally checked it out, and it's called The Beach House.
Don't be scared.
And what a movie! Okay, the title, the cover, the little bits and pieces you hear will not prepare you for the insanity that this movie is. The first half of this movie is one movie, and then the second half is something totally different. And you'll understand why when you watch it. It makes sense, even though when you hear that, you're like, what? Why? It just makes sense. Like, at the halfway point, some crazy stuff happens, or I guess maybe 2/3 of the movie or one way, I don't know. But basically at one point in the movie, it just completely changes into something totally different and becomes incredible. The first part of this movie, though, does get slow at times, and you do have to kind of hang in there, because even though it's kind of fun and this weird awkward thing, because there's this young couple and this older couple that accidentally end up in the same little beach house, and there's a lot of weird uncomfortableness between them, like an awkwardness, because neither of the couples were expecting the other, and it was supposed to be an intimate weekend or whatever, so they're just kind of weird, and there's a little bit of fun there, but for the most part, it runs a little boring and a little slow, but I promise you, it's setting you up for when this movie goes off the fucking deep end. And if you hang in there, it is worth it. Body horror, craziness, alienness, goriness, like, just cosmic horror, level 10. I mean, we're talking color out of space type of stuff. Just, I loved this movie. Honestly, like, that's why it's the number one on this or whatever, is because it's like my new favorite discovery, because it's that cool. So if I haven't talked it up enough already, I'm sure some of you are gonna yell at me because you're not gonna like this, because I'm just me. I like what I like. Not everybody agrees. But if you are into cosmic horror stuff, like The Void, like Color Out of Space, you like the visuals of that, then I think this is one that you're definitely going to enjoy. So if that sounds like something that you're into, like I am, then by all means, check out The Beach House. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this list. I appreciate you guys watching this so much. And leave some comments down below. If there's a movie on Shudder that I've never recommended and yet you're into, let me know about it. I'm always looking for suggestions. And also do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that is the best way to keep track of this channel and when I post videos like this. And I try to post videos like this 2 times every week. And I also want to give a huge thank you to my patrons, because your support means so much to me. And if you would like to find out more about becoming a patron, the link is down in the description. And like always guys, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun. I will see you guys next time.